All right, guys. This first story is actually quite recent, sent in by a subscriber named Jason. The details he provides about the house are, frankly, unsettling, and I strongly advise listening with caution. He told me that when he finally looked closer at what was on the glass, he couldn't stop shaking. Let's get into it. Hey folks, I used to laugh off scary stories, right up until this happened. Last October, I accepted a temporary job at a remote research facility way out in the mountains. The gig was great, good pay, but I needed a place to stay. After weeks of searching, I stumbled upon a Craigslist ad for a massive old house. The price was suspiciously low, like ridiculously low, especially given its size. It was a 3-story Victorian, the kind you'd see in movies, with a wraparound porch and turrets. It was situated about an hour away from the facility, nestled deep in a valley surrounded by dense pine forests.
The place was huge, empty, and gave off a distinctly off vibe from the start, but I figured I'd be at work most of the time anyway. The first few nights were just creepy. Old houses make noises, I know, but these noises felt almost intentional. I'd be in the kitchen and hear heavy footsteps on the 3rd floor. I'd check, and it was just dust and shadows. Sometimes I'd hear doors closing on floors where I knew no one else was staying. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just settling timbers and my own overactive imagination. But the main issue started about a week in. It was a clear, crisp night when I noticed the first stain. I was walking back from the kitchen with a cup of coffee and glanced up at one of the narrow, arched windows that lined the staircase. It was on the 2nd-story landing. At first, I thought it was just a streak of dirt or bird droppings on the outside, but it was too consistent. A deep, dark red streak, oozing slowly down the glass. I ran my hand over the pane. It was on the inside. My heart hammered a sudden heavy beat against my ribs. "No," I whispered, pulling my hand back. It was wet.
The next morning, it was gone. I checked, and the glass was completely clean. I figured I must have been tired, imagining things. But that night, it was back, and it was worse. The same window had 3 distinct rivulets. Another window in the hallway now had them too. They weren't just stains anymore. They looked like fresh, flowing blood. That's when the smell hit me. A cloying, metallic, coppery odor that seemed to fill the entire hallway. It made my gorge rise. I started to do some digging. I found that the original owner of the house, a reclusive industrialist, had lost his entire family in an accident. The rumors said his wife and children had been trapped in the house during a freak blizzard. The search parties found him alive, but completely maddened, standing over the lifeless bodies of his family in the parlor. They said his eyes were fixed on the windows, screaming that he couldn't stop the bleeding. Things escalated quickly. The rivulets turned into sheets. By the 10th night, entire windows on the 2nd floor looked like they were drenched in blood. The sight was horrific, but the sounds that started to accompany them were even worse. I began to hear them, faint at first, then distinct. Crying. Cries of children and a woman's voice calling for help. It always seemed to be coming from just outside the glass, but the windows themselves were on an upper floor. I'd race outside with my flashlight, but there was never anyone there. Nothing but the black void of the forest. I couldn't sleep. Every night was a battle with terror. I tried covering the windows, but the thick black tarps would eventually peel back as if clawed from the outside. The dark liquid would just flow underneath, seeping into the wooden frames. The smell was unbearable, soaked into the carpet and wallpaper. I felt trapped. I needed the money, and leaving meant losing the security deposit.
but my sanity was fraying.
The final straw was that Tuesday. I was on my laptop in my temporary living room when a high-pitched, desperate sob from upstairs made me nearly jump out of my skin. It was directly above me, in one of the third-story turrets. I bolted. I didn't want to go up there, but I had to know. The third floor was colder than the rest of the house, the air thick and oppressive. I walked down the narrow corridor to the turret room. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. All 3 windows in the room were completely and totally bathed in blood. It wasn't just oozing, it was pulsing, like a massive wound. Thick streams were flowing onto the floor, pooling in the center. The sound was deafening, multiple voices screaming and crying. And then I saw it, the window furthest to my right. There was something embedded in the glass. It wasn't just a streak. I forced myself closer, gripping my flashlight with a hand that shook violently. At first, it just looked like a shape. Then, as I focused the beam, I saw it. It was the face of a small child, maybe 6 years old. Its expression was one of absolute terror, mouth wide in a silent scream. Its hands were pressed against the glass, and from beneath its fingertips, fresh torrents of blood were bursting forth, feeding the red flow on the window pane. I didn't think. I just ran. I grabbed my car keys, left my laptop, left my clothes, left everything. I didn't even lock the door. I drove until the engine nearly overheated, not stopping until I saw the first gas station with human life. I slept in my car. I never went back. I called the owner from my phone and told him I was out, that the house could keep the money, and that they should send someone to clean the windows. They hung up on me. When I checked the property listing online a few days later, the price was even lower. So yeah, I don't dismiss scary stories anymore. I know what I saw. I know that old Victorian houses aren't just empty spaces. Sometimes they're still filled with the horrors that built them. Horrors that bleed right on the glass.